Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov chess channel, and welcome to the game that everyone is talking about. Welcome to the game between Anish, Giri and Nikita Vitiugov for the FIDE Grand Prix in 2022 from Belgrade. So this game is really incredible because we're not used to see really Anish Giri playing in a tactical way. He's many times playing really beautiful positional games. His chess understanding is really good. He has really a brilliant positional understanding, but when it comes to tactical plays, sometimes we missed really Anish Giri's tactical solutions in particular positions, but not in this game. Believe it or not, this was really one of the best games. In my opinion, it's really one of the best games of this year. Be prepared. You'll see now the wildest Anish Giri that you can see, because this is really a beautiful attacking game by the Dutchman. So let's check out now the game. Be prepared. Put your seatbelts on. This is the game of the day. So here E4 played by Anish Giri. We have E5 by Nikita Vitiugov, and we have now knight to F3, knight to C6, and after move bishop to C4, I thought, okay, what's going on? Again, an Italian game, and many times the Italian game is sort of a boring game where we have sort of positional chess where you're searching for good squares, where you're searching for maybe weak pawn or something, but not in this game. If you're familiar with the Italian game, when the Italian game is not positional, then it can be really wild, especially because of the bishop's activity, for instance, around the square f7, and also the f2 can be sort of a weakness, also the g7, g2, so many pawns can be weakness, and even if you calculate, if you secure the king, still so many explosions can happen all over the board. So that's why it was this tactical Italian game. So here, after move bishop to c5, we have now the symmetrical Italian game. We have now the so-called gioco piano, and here after move Nikita Vitiugov played the normal knight to f6. So we have d3, classical system, pretty standard stuff. And here after move d6, we have now c3 by Anish Giri. Again, I'm pointing out after h6 and here rook to e1. Don't be so scared by your opponent's pins. If your opponent, for instance, is trying to move bishop to g4, this is not a huge problem, although you would love, of course, to cover yourself with the bishop. You don't want to have the queen like this stuck to the defense of the knight, but you have really a beautiful maneuver, and I've talked about this maneuver many times on my YouTube chess channel, so I wanted to show you again how you can get out of this tactical mess in a beautiful positional way. You play simply h3, bishop to h5, and now with knight to d2, knight to f1, knight to g3, you can push away the bishop without further messing up your pawn structure. So that's why don't be so scared if your opponent, for instance, plays an early bishop to g4. It's not such a huge threat. So after move rook to e1, here Nikita Vitiugov castled, and we have now knight to d2. Still the same move order is played, because the main strategical goal of the Italian game, and many times a similar position happens in the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish game, we want to have this d5 as sort of an outposted square, and also the f5 we want to use in order to outpost some pieces, some knight, maybe even some bishops on these two squares. So these are clear targets now for white. On the other hand, black would love, of course, to cement some of the pieces around the square f4. So we have now a5, also pretty standard stuff, and now h3. Now what Anish is trying to do, he's not allowing here black to pin him anymore, because he's trying now knight to f1, and then maybe in some occasions even to break through to get finally central expansion with the move d4. This d4 has to be prepared. It's always there, but it has to be prepared. Be careful with these moves, because if you're playing too early d4, then you could also weaken the e4. So that's why you should be careful when you're preparing this idea. So here bishop to e6, and here again I thought, okay, now we having really this boring standard Italian game stuff where white is training off the bishop, f takes e6, and then at least what black is doing is controlling the f5 square, and also is controlling the d5. In some occasions we could also expect a d5, and that was not the case. That's now the beautiful probably preparation, some of maybe homemade preparations here by Anish Giri. He played now an interesting b3. This b3 does several things. First of all, this b3 weakens the c3 square. We have to say the c3 is a little bit loose on the board, this pawn on c3, but it creates really a nice grip on life force. And the problem for black in this particular scenario is that black cannot take the pawn on the bishop on c4, because white's progress will be really beautiful here, because b takes c4. As we said in the beginning of the video, we want to have some of these pieces occupied on f5 and also on d5. And now basically black gave up the only piece that is protecting these two squares. So now with some ideas like knight to f1, knight to g3, d4, I think the central pawn storm that white will build here is simply too much to handle for black. d4, d5, even rook to b1 are opportunities to attack maybe the weak b7 square on the b file. So as I said, too many attacking possibilities here for white. So the engine gives here already +1 evaluation for white, although the material is equal, but the engine really loves here white's position. So as I said, b3 really interesting. Many of us, I think, would simply take it out and hope for the best. So here in the continuation, Nikita Vitiugov found, I think, the best idea. He played an aggressive d4, and also although this d5 weakens a little bit the e5 square, what he noticed is after e takes d5 and knight to d5 that the c3 is weak. As we said, the c3 becomes now huge weakness in Anish Giri's position, but he found here really a beautiful counterplay with the move knight to e4, and now the bishop is hanging on c5. So far here Anish Giri gets an extra tempo. We have bishop to b6, and again a beautiful and new idea sort of. Here Anish Giri plays very nice improvement, I think, of theory. He plays queen to d2, and again in the beginning it seems so. It's a weird move because it's blocking out its own bishop. The bishop should be here. It should attack this side of the board. But what Anish found really here is that he can always develop the dark square bishop on this diagonal. So this bishop, although temporarily it's blocked out by its own queen, and you don't want to have your bishops blocked out, but it can come into the game. That's now the huge and important thing that Anish Giri realized here, and that's why I really love this move, because what we can notice, okay, the d3 is a little bit weak, but now with bishop to h3 and something like rook to d1, still we have a great protection of the d3 square. And as we said, black will never take out your bishop, which is controlling also the d3 square because of the f5 weakness. So that's why here I think the d3 is not such a huge problem, and this setup, the d3, c3 and b3 are controlling many squares on the fourth rank, and black would love, of course, would love to use these squares, but cannot. This 3 pawns are building really a beautiful restriction against black's minor pieces. So that's why it's really beautiful positional play so far by Anish Giri. So here we have the first mistake in the game, queen to c8, and that was not good here by Nikita Vitiugov. He should have proceeded with the normal rook to e8. The rook to e8 is, I think, a classical move in Ruy Lopez, in Spanish games, in Italian games, because first of all, this move is protecting the e5 further, and we can agree, I think, the e5 is a huge problem in black's position. When something gets cleared on the e file, then the e5 pawn could be long-term weakness. But now with the move bishop to b5, probably maybe black was probably scared about this kind of tactics with bishop to c6 and then knight to e5, but actually this is defendable with knight to e7. And even if bishop to a3 happens to attack this knight further, then you have simply knight to g6, and still you have a protection of the e5. If black gets challenged with bishop to c6, then you have b takes c6, and now with the bishop pair, I think black is here a comfortable game. So as I said, queen to c8, not the best of moves. Of course, after rook to e8, white can play also different ideas. I wanted to show you the main goal, bishop to b5, and then maybe to create the weakness. But queen to c8 is really bad, because here Anish Giri continues simply the pressure around the square e5, and here we have already a challenge position. That's why here f6 had to be played sort of, but again probably queen to d7, and if you take knight takes e5, then knight takes e5, rook to e5, now comes the stunner queen to d6, and I think this could be at least some kind of a tactical way to get out of this mess, because you cannot retreat to e1. This is now the stunner, you get queen takes g3. Look at this. So there was maybe a slightly better way for Nikita Vitiugov to defend his position, but this is really wild. You have to see everything here, so that's why it wasn't maybe the best of choices to play the move f6. But now after the move f6, we can notice that so many light score problems here are present around the king, and what to do when you have some kind of weakness, when we have square weaknesses. It's simply time to get rid of all of the pieces that are protecting the square. So what I mean about that is that we want to get rid of the bishop. For instance, the bishop is controlling, of course, the light squares. We want to also get rid of this knight. This knight can be also protected with knight to e7, for instance. You can also protect the light squares. Now it's time to get rid of all of the pieces that are protecting the light squares. Here in the continuation, d4 played by Anish Giri. Really beautiful move, because in some occasions we could even, I think, sacrifice, not maybe immediately, but as a beautiful tactical shot, we could also play something like knight takes, rook takes e6. Then after queen to e6, you see many pieces would be here in front of white's light square bishop. Then also maybe some further pressure around the square d5 e6 could be possible. So that's why here d4 to open the e file is really beautiful move here by Anish Giri. And now Nikita Vitiugov plays queen to d7, the move that he should have played earlier. Now he realizes that the move queen to c8 didn't bring him anything, and now here Anish Giri plays his normal idea, bishop to a3. And look at this setup: bishop on a3 on a good square, bishop on c4 on a good square, knight on f3, knight on g3 on perfect squares. They're controlling here many squares, so they can jump into the game very easily. So this position can all get open, and of course you want to have your knights like this. Now the rooks are connected, so many beautiful attacking opportunities. I would not love to be here in black's position. So here in the continuation we have rook to f7, so getting out of the range of the bishop. And now comes again sort of a critical moment of the game. Here Anish Giri probably realized that he's dominating all over the board, and when you feel comfortable in the position, then you want to play really wild chess. I did the same many times. I had, of course, better and more and really more positional moves, and here of course the best move is to simply proceed with rook to d1. What you can do, of course, you can maybe try e takes d4, but now after c takes d4 you could have some kind of an idea to block the position with the move knight to b4. But look at this, knight to h4, knight to f5 are opportunities. So this is now, I think, a comfortable game. Then afterwards, as we said, rook takes e6 is also working, then bishop to b4, then this bishop is becoming a monster bishop. So as I said, so many good opportunities here for white. But for the beauty of the game here, Anish Giri played the wild rook to e4. Really wild stuff, and I like this choice. This is not the best suggested move by the engines. It's a wild move, but getting this rook centralized is really beautiful idea, because what Anish is trying to do is to get this rook all over the fourth rank, maybe to h4, where it could create some sacrifices. Maybe sacrifice it on h6 and maybe get use of this knight. Jump also on g5, on h4, f5. As we said, the knights on g3 and f3 can get into the attack very easily. The problem for black in this position is that you cannot play f5, because then you get knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook to e5. So you cannot kick away the rook with the pawn move. That's the beauty of the rook in the center of the board. Really wild move by Anish Giri, but I really liked it because I really wanted to see sometimes Anish Giri playing in this way. Many times, as I said, he's playing really beautiful positional static chess, but now with the move rook t4, he's saying you'll see now the tactical Anish today. So here a4, this is now the best move here by Nikita Vitiugov. He realizes that he wants to attack further this bishop on a3, because what Anish would love to do is, of course, to double up the rooks on the e file, but this is not possible because of a takes b3. You see, after a takes b3, the bishop is hanging. So at least in this particular scenario, Nikita Vitiugov would get the tempo, and probably it's now a better position now for black. So as I said, here with the move a4, at least somehow Nikita Vitiugov is blocking out the potential attack now by the dark square bishop. So we have now b4. Here Anish Giri is saying, okay, I'm locking now finally the a file. Still this pawn is mobile, so I can create some madness here with the move b5. And now maybe it's time to remaneuver the bishop to c1, where we could maybe, as we said, rook to h4, rook to h6, then queen to h6, support with the bishop. So many tactical shots can happen around the square h6, around the square g6, h7. So these are now the clear targets, because the pawn structure in front of black's king is so weakened. So really a weird position now for black. So we have now knight to f4. Great move by Nikita Vitiugov, but this is again sort of a continuation that as we said, we wanted to get. We simply trading off the bishops because the bishop was the key defender of light square. So now mission accomplished for Anish, because after knight to e6, of course, queen to e6 is not working. Here queen to f4 is then possible, then you lose the queen. So this is not good. So that's why knight to e6, and now here rook to e1. Again, d5 is not such an important idea here, because knight to g5 can happen, knight takes g5, h6 g5, and now with rook to d1, then knight to e7, we're getting out of the range. So there was never really the possibility that this knight could be taken because of the pressure on the d file. So that's why here after move knight to e6, here Anish Giri played rook to e1, and here probably again d5 could be possible, but as we said, he's staying now very active with this rooks. That's the goal that he wanted to get when he played rook to e4. He wanted to have this rook battery, and now again Anish has a really beautiful setup. Here in the continuation we have now knight to g5, knight takes g5, h takes g5, and now again really a stunner, I think. Now Anish plays the move b5. We have seen d5 is perfectly fine. Here also you cannot take it, but at least you get this pieces advanced. If for instance knight to e7 happens, then with c4 I think white is here really a comfortable game, because f5 is really never a possibility. Then the e5 is hanging, but the engine for instance likes also black's position. The engine gives here equal chances for both sides, so nothing gained so much here for Anish Giri. But with the move b5, he's saying, okay, I'm now deflecting your knight from the defense. And here I think Nikita Vitiugov fall for a little bit fall into Anish Giri's traps, because after move knight to a7, now the real fun starts, because here Anish Giri is, I think, saying to himself, now mission accomplished, now the knight is deflected from the defense of the king, and that's now a huge and important tactical maneuver, because okay, again I'm pointing out the engine gives here equal chances, but for a human eye I think attacking opportunities to create are really hard, and also to defend this weird positions where you have so many weaknesses. So that's why I think it was such a beautiful idea here by Anish Giri to deflect the knight from the defense of the king, although his pawn on b5 is saying, but he's saying now I'm going to continue my pressure with the move h4. Here probably g4 is the best way here for black to proceed, because at least with the move g4 you're locking some very important files. You're not allowing maybe some h file attacks, because if the rook comes on h file, then it's very weird position. But here Nikita Vitiugov played after move h4, he took simply knight to b5, and here Anish sacrifices the piece. He's saying, okay, you can take out the bishop, but again your knight is simply too far away from the action. We have f takes g5 here by Nikita Vitiugov, and now queen to g5, and here comes now the really critical moment of the game. Here the only way to defend its position is actually knight takes c3, not knight takes a3. So if you play knight to c3, then the continuation would be like this: rook to e5. So black took a pawn, white took a pawn, and probably this should end in a draw, because after bishop to d4 the rook gets attacked, and then rook to f5 we're trying to trade it off, and here with rook to e8 black can really simplify the position, can trade off more pieces, and the position gets more and more simplified. Maybe you can take out this one. This is simply a stockfish line here that I'm showing. After king to g6, as I said, the game should probably end in a draw. So nothing special gained here. That was the only way to protect its position, but here Nikita Vitiugov got a little bit greedy. He took the bishop on a3. Really beautiful trap here by Anish, because now he has a beautiful attack with rook to h4, rook to e8, and now he's threatening immediately checkmate on h8. The only way to protect this is really wild is to play rook to f6, and now Anish Giri realizes that he has really beautiful setup. Now the rook is on a good file. The rook and queen battery is perfectly fine. The only piece that has to be included into the game is of course the knight on g3. So that's why knight to e4, and the problem is now you cannot lock the h file. Rook to h6 is not possible, because you get queen takes h6, g takes h6, and now you get knight to f6 to fork. Really beautiful tactical shot that Anish Giri saw. So here after a move knight to e4, here Nikita Vitiugov played rook to f5, but now with knight to g5 we're threatening checkmate. The knight on g5 is controlling the very important f7 score, so that's why rook takes g5, queen to g5, and we have now a new position in which okay, Nikita Vitiugov has two minor pieces for the rook, but as we said, the knight is simply too far away from the action. The knight is on a3. The knight will need, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to get back into the game. Meanwhile, white's attack is really well. Although, again, the engine gives here equal chance, but I would not love to play this position for black. As I said, this is a really weird position. And now comes, again, a new critical moment. The only way actually to get somehow the draw here is to again play the move knight to c4, and it's actually quite logical when you think about it harder, because you getting your piece back into the game. Then something like queen to g6 should be probably played, with some ideas to play queen to h7, and now rook to e6, then queen to h7, and probably after a couple perpetuals, this is not the way. You cannot get your king on the 7th rank. You have to always stay first on the 8th rank, and now a couple of checks here. You can only just do perpetuals. What you should not do, as we said, is to get your king on the 7th rank. When that happens, then you have rook to g4, and this is not a good way anymore. To protect the position, you can maybe try it this way, but now with queen to h8, the king gets on f7, and then you lose the queen. So probably with the move knight to c4, this position still could be defendable. But here Nikita Vitiugov tried to play active chess, tried to somehow get the bishop into the game, and get punished, because now with queen to g6 we have now the clear target. It's now the weak g7 square, and also with queen to h5 to deliver checkmate on the h file. So here we have bishop to d8, and here after move rook to h7 in this position, here Nikita Vitiugov resigned. Why did he resign? Because let's see possible continuations. If you play queen to e7, then you get queen to h5. There's not a good way anymore to protect this, so rook to h8 is going to happen, and the queen is controlling the f7 square. So the only way, let's see, maybe you're trying something like knight to c4 again to get the piece back into the game. Then you get queen to h5, again this checkmate threat. So if you play king to f8, then d takes e5 is now the winning move. It's really wild, although it seems in the beginning that this pawn is now getting in front of the rook, and you're cutting off here the rook connection. You're cutting off this very important attack on the e-file. But the beauty about this move is that actually you want to attack the king further by the move rook to d1. When the king gets maybe here, when the king is trying to escape on the d-file, then rook to d1 is a possibility. So again, the only way you have to escape, you're playing something like king to e7, but of course rook to g7 is going to happen, so that's not an option. What you could try here is to play queen to f7, but now with rook to h8 you got a check, king to e7, now queen to g5, again a new check. You have to escape, and now with queen to g4, look at this. If you cover yourself, then we have this tactical shot, queen to g7. For instance, if you try to cover yourself with the rook, then queen to f8, then rook to d1 could happen. So really too many tactical possibilities. If you, for instance, try this idea, knight to e5, then you see you lose the piece. So it's simply, I think, a position that you could resign. So here, what you could also do after this move, queen to e6, as we said, queen to g7. If you try maybe to escape with the king, then rook takes e8. Look at this, queen to e8, and now comes a beautiful stunner, queen to g4 is also opportunity with the check, and then you take simply out the knight, and this is of course completely winning. So as I said, really stunning tactical shots here by Anish Giri. Really, I love this game, especially because he tried really here to play aggressive attacking chess, sacrifice some pieces. As I said, don't look always when you analyze some games at home, don't look always the computer evaluations. They're not so important. I think the human evaluation is very important when we analyze some games, because it was so hard for black to find these moves. White was always on the attacking side, and when you're defensive side all through the whole game, then you will probably make an inaccurate move, because it's much easier to attack in chess than to defend yourself in chess. You should always memorize that. Maybe you should also always remember when you, as I said, when you're the attacking side, it's so easy to play sometimes, because you finding always the best next attacking move, but when you're the defensive side, you can make huge mistakes, and you see this is top grandmaster level, and they make them too. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed this attacking brutal Anish Giri. Really great stuff. If you want to see more games like this, check out my best games of all time series with some more beautiful attacks like this. And if you want to see also some different games from other tournaments, check out my coverages before. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.